Live in Corporate is brought to you by Pfizer. Every day, Pfizer colleagues work across developed and emerging markets to advance wellness, prevention, treatments, and cures that challenge the most feared diseases of our time. For more than 170 years, Pfizer has worked to make a difference for all of those who rely on them. Learn more at Pfizer.com.
This is Including You, the new series from Lead at Any Level. Including You features stories from chief diversity officers and other executives who are creating inclusive cultures in their organizations. Our goal is to show what's working in companies just like yours, to give you the tools you need to keep pushing for progress in your own workplace. We want to create belonging and opportunity for everyone, including you. And now here's your host, Amy C. Waninger.
Welcome back to Including You. I'm your host, Amy C. Waninger. My guest today is Patti Fletcher. Patti is the Chief Marketing Officer, or CMO, at Limeade. Limeade is an immersive employee well-being company that creates healthy employee experiences. Millions of users in over 100 countries use Limeade solutions to navigate the future of work. By putting well-being at the heart of the employee experience, Limeade reduces burnout and turnover while increasing well-being and engagement, ultimately elevating business performance. Limeade itself employs people in Washington, Canada, Germany, and Vietnam. Patti, welcome to the show. I'm glad to have you here.
Thanks for having me. Thrilled to be here.
So I wanted to start with help us understand, because this is a show about inclusion, help us understand the relationship between inclusion and well-being at work and in general.
It's such a good topic. I have to tell you. So I just started at Limeade in January. I grew up in the HRMS world, right? SAP, the big guys, right? The big folks who are all about the pipes and plumbing, and that's perfect. We need them. But I grew up as a woman in tech, essentially. And although I had wonderful support throughout my career, I certainly experienced being a woman in tech, no doubt there. And things around self-care were brought to me throughout my career, and in a way that was quite negative. It was almost weaponized, right? And self-care being the well-being. And I'll talk a little bit about, as we go through, like, how do we define well-being in Limeade? But it was weaponized, and it was always, can you handle it, right? Can you go take a nap and go to a spa on a weekend? And that way you'll be refreshed. So I came to this topic, as well as stuff I do on the outside of my day job, which I know we'll talk about. I came to this topic of well-being via this self-care route, which was ridiculous. On the one hand, I had the professional, are you going to be okay? This might be too much for you. On the personal side, as a mom who travels a lot, who does all this stuff, and I'm a mom, it was like, okay, you're not working and you're going to go work out. That's so selfish. So there's like all of these things that we're conditioned to have. I'm a pretty typical woman, right? Come on, Amy, we're all dealing with this when we work for a living. So the thing about well-being, though, is it is more than self-care. At Limeade, well-being fits into 4 categories. There's work well-being. We know from the data, our own data, as well as the data out there that you and I are both reading, that at this point in time, and probably even before the pandemic, the number one source of stress is work, right? So we need to understand what work well-being looks like. The next, of course, is emotional. Right? So are we burnt out? Now, when we think about being a woman in the workplace before the pandemic, we were pretty burnt out. We work 3 shifts. We get up in the morning, we take care of our kids, we go to work, and then we come home, and what do? We continue to invest. We're going on Google, we're taking classes, right? We're working those 3 shifts. When you're burning the candle, not just at both ends, but in the middle as well, you got some challenges, and your well-being is going to suffer. So that is the emotional. Then there's the physical well-being. Do I have any kind of chronic conditions? Am I mobile, right? Am I able to move around and really use my body in a way that is going to help me? I could be quite sick, but if I am physically taking care of myself, I have a lot of chronic conditions, but they don't stop me because I'm taking care of that. So are we on top of that? And then the final piece is finance. What is our financial well-being? So we know that millennials are in more debt than any generation, including my own Gen X, and I thought we were pretty bad off, right? But they are in bigger debt. Things cost more. They're spending more money. That things are looking quite a bit different for them, and the same for Gen Z. When you look at all 4 of those components, Amy, we have a few challenges as women. We get paid less. We do. We get paid less. Talk about stress, right? It takes us longer to earn more money. We might not be able to buy the things or experience the things that we want. That's a challenge. And we consider how many women who, like me, are the main breadwinners or sole breadwinners. That's a big deal, right? That's a big impact. When we think about financial well-being, I am, and I'm going to just use myself as an example because it's easy. I am busy. I work all the time. Guess what I would do? I would skip doctor appointments. I wouldn't even make them, right? Meanwhile, this is the only body I have. I'm in big trouble if I can't use it. Emotional well-being for women, we are still conditioned to believe we're too emotional, that we can't show our emotions at work. We all know that's, quite frankly, BS, right? That's actually not true. But we're so conditioned there that a lot of those things that we will need to do for ourselves, we're not doing because we feel it makes us less than. We feel vulnerable and it exposes us. Definitely a big deal. And then again, we already talked about the work well-being. These things could not be more critical. So I am talking specifically about women, but you can put any underrepresented population in there, and we're all facing those same challenges. The connection's pretty significant.
Yeah, and I would say it's not just how we feel about how we show up. There are real penalties for showing up authentically at work.
Yeah.
And those penalties are exacerbated the more marginalized identities we carry.
That's right.
Or the more marginalized those identities are. So I guess I want to be careful about letting anybody take away that you should just have your emotions at work, because there are people who get fired for that. There are people who get ostracized.
We don't always have the luxury. We don't have the luxury, which is why I think so many of us have the visceral reactions we do when we see someone who does fit the mold of what success looks like. And that, quite frankly, all of the rules were made for that person. And they talk about how important it is to be authentic or emotional at work. I have not always had that experience. It was good. Again, weaponized against you. I think you're right on to carry that out. Know the room and maybe find a place where you can just be yourself, for sure.
Yeah. So let's talk a little bit about how belonging factors in.
Yeah.
I know you chose Limeade partially because of their mission, but also because of the work that they're doing internally around diversity and inclusion. Can you talk? I want to get back to how you help your clients as well, but can you talk a little bit about what you're doing internally to move the needle so that you're walking the talk? And setting the standard for what you bring to the marketplace.
Yeah. So the reason I came to Limeade is I believe in aligning my passion with my profession, because I just don't have a lot of time. None of us do. So you may as well do the work that moves forward those things you want to bring, your purpose. And so for me, my thing, and we'll talk about this again later and how it relates to the outside of Limeade, but I do believe my purpose is to change the way the world views women who disrupt and how they view themselves, which means every single talent needs to be able to harness and hinder their ability, their own personal ability, right? Their own personal power to achieve what they want to achieve in the workplace. That should be up to me, not somebody else. Super important. And that's what Limeade is. Again, coming from a more productivity focus, which is essential, but workflow, that kind of thing, world. What we don't think about is true capacity. Diminished capacity is when all of those things I just talked to about, 4 parts of well-being, that they're pretty low, right? Your energy in those areas are pretty freaking low. So therefore, if you invest in your people, like we do at Limeade, like our customers do, in those 4 categories, in a way where what I receive is different, Amy, than what you receive, because we're 2 different people. We need 2 different things. Our assessments said 2 different things about how we can elevate in each of those 4 criteria. When you're doing that, what's going to happen? I'm going to feel seen. I'm going to feel heard. I'm going to feel like I found the right stage and the right audience, and I'm going to thrive. And when I thrive, everybody thrives, right? The business thrives, the customers thrive. So internally, there are a few things. First is, in having worked in the DEIB space for a very long time, like I have, I was very against quotas, very against them, until I realized they were the only things that worked. We don't have quotas at Limeade. We are very serious about achieving gender equity. That's where we're starting. We're learning things through the work we're doing with gender, what we're achieving, and then being able to apply them to other underrepresented populations. So I work at a tech company, usually the only woman in the room, right? Very used to that. Now I'm at Limeade. 50% of what we call the CEO directs, essentially the C-suite, we're women. Our board, majority women. Our chairperson, a woman. The more than half of our company, even in the strategic positions, you guessed it, women, right? And you can't do that if things aren't different around, for example, talent acquisition. If we go to the same room and talk to the same people about the same stuff, we're going to get a mirrorocracy, which is what I call it in my book, Disruptors, which we'll talk about. Essentially, the person in the mirror looks like everybody else who I hire in my organization. Same skills, same thought process, not a lot of differentiation there. Maybe one is he grew up in sales and he grew up in product. Big deal, right? So to have those kinds of diverse in a room is a big deal. So not only do we have the diversity numbers, we have the inclusion numbers. We are very much always working on how do I, as a leader, create an inclusive space where all voices feel heard without prompting when I say something, if it's not listened to. I have colleagues in the room, men, women, they, who will go, gosh, Patti just said 10 minutes ago. And of course, I'm doing that too. So we're modeling that inclusive behavior. We're modeling things like, gosh, in my own team, I have single moms who are, I'm really lucky my kids are grown up because I have no idea what it's like now where nannies aren't coming. And there's just a lot, right? A lot going on, again, making it harder. And that does tend to fall on the mom. And we're at a workplace where that's okay. We're going to figure this out. We have to serve our customers. We got to delight our customers. My org's job is to break through the noise, but I'm not going to do it at the expense of my people. So what are those things our HR org is doing in order to be able to meet people where they are individually, and what does that look like? And then, of course, we have ERGs, right? The Women at Limeade kinds of groups where we get together and we talk about things. For me, I'm a member of the sandwich generation. I can't even. It's so hard. I got a mom with Alzheimer's, lots of health issues. I have kids about to go off to college, right? There's all these things going on, not to mention the emotional stuff happening with me. And so I need a different kind of level of support, and I'm getting those kinds of things from the org. The most exciting thing, though, is the belonging piece, right? So for us, it's not about me saying, you belong here, Amy. It's about you looking in the mirror and saying, I belong here. And so some of those things that we're doing when we get the diversity, we have the inclusion. What's going to keep me in the room? What's going to keep me in the room is my way of making decisions, where I'm pretty relational. Like most women, I'm quite relational. If we make this kind of decision, this investment, this divestment, how does it impact these different stakeholders, these different other investments? That's the kind of reason, like that kind of thinking gets women kicked out of boardrooms. At Limeade, it gets you included in the room, right? Because we have to force ourselves to make changes differently. So there's nuance, absolutely, but there is also the expectation of how we work together to ensure we all belong in the room.
So how does the work that Limeade does then help your clients achieve well-being and belonging in the companies that you serve?
Yeah, there's a few different things. Let's talk about the data and let's talk about some actual experiences. So what we have seen in the data is what? Women in particular, and particularly Black women, have been impacted more negatively than any other population during the pandemic. So there's a lot less tolerance for us having the more flexible kind of schedule, like we do here at Limeade, work from anywhere, remote first kind of schedule. Pick your hours. It's kind of get your work done, work with your team, create those relationships. So that's really important when you're investing in someone's holistic well-being. That's pretty critical. We do that as a company. As a product, whereas other people in our space are focused in on digitalizing and really automating the process, our solutions are more human applications. We surround the person. What do they need on those four: work, emotional, physical, and financial, in order to be supported? When we look at the fact that women were the number one job losers, when we have back to having to choose between, do I take care of myself, my family, or my job? And I can only choose one. When you have a solution like Limeade, where you take this well-being assessment, it tells you where you stand in terms of the health. And then using artificial intelligence, you are served up with things like activities and content. Here are the things you can do. Here are the things you can learn that will help you be able to get.
The Antigen podcast returns with a 3-part miniseries spotlighting maternal immunization. When it comes to vaccine development, there's been a shifting paradigm. Help protect pregnant women and their infants through research rather than from research. Join us this season to dive deeper into this topic, the history, challenges, innovations, and exciting developments to come. Subscribe and listen to The Antigen, powered by Pfizer, on your favorite podcast app.
Better harmony in your life, not balance, because that's a myth, better harmony, but also where you have agency, right? Where you can take control and say, I'm not choosing between those three. I'm choosing three. I might even add a fourth. And so that's the first. The second is we force people, not just women, but mostly women and other underrepresented populations who, again, are constantly having to prove, to your point, right, earlier around, let's be careful about telling people to open the kimono and show up crying. That's not what we're saying. But we're all conditioned to force underrepresented populations to prove what they've already proved to us, which is they're human and can be pretty awesome. There's this constant kind of proving piece. And in the solution, when you have to prove, or in any work area, when you have to prove, you're typically going to choose the thing that you got to prove, which is, I guess I'll choose work and the other stuff will leave behind. And oh, by the way, I don't want to have to go to some strange place to go figure out what is an option for me for well-being. So not only do we make people choose between their well-being and work in that kind of high level philosophical, we actually do it pragmatically because we make it really hard to go find those well-being things besides open enrollment in November where you choose insurance in this country. So what we do is we're infusing well-being into daily work, things like integration with teams, where it's literally right there with you, where our platform becomes part of how the next piece around women is community. So not only do I want something that's going to talk to me where as a 52-year-old woman, I probably don't need something that would support me if I had infants, right? Because I don't. So I have those things served up for me personally based on all the algorithms. But the other piece is that human connection, being able to, regardless of where you are, connect with other humans in a way that you are acting on the cultural-based behaviors of your company. So for us, one of them is speak plainly. Another one is all around teamwork. So I will go into my solution, or our customers will, and they will call out, gosh, Patti, thanks for being in this meeting. You lived this speak plainly, must have been really hard, have an uncomfortable conversation. And then other folks kind of chime in and belong in that conversation. One of our customers, state of Washington, during the pandemic, there's this one video that there were multiple videos, but one of them that stuck in my mind from some of their employees. This woman had just gotten her job at the state of Washington. She moves from like Texas or something to Washington state, and the world breaks down. By the way, she has psoriasis, so her skin, she's very uncomfortable, not only physically, but embarrassed by her looks. She gets on-ramped as part of becoming a new employee. You get on-ramped with the well-being solution. You take this assessment, it spits stuff back to her. And all of a sudden, she's connecting with people that she's working with, people who live around her, right? Because of the geographic location component. She is completely transformed her diet, which helped with her autoimmune challenges. She learned all these things. And oh, by the way, she started making friends based on the well-being stuff too. So all of a sudden her life became transformed. And going back to the very basic human need and things most women don't feel is seen at work, accepted. And that's how our customers are using it. That's how we are using it. Of course, there's the cost cutting around not spending so much time with people